Are you ready for an amazing kickoff keynote speaker? When it comes to using her talent to channel conversation and evoke positive change, tonight's keynote speaker, Liza Donnelly, has literally drawn out the world with great lines. A writer and award-winning cartoonist with the New Yorker magazine and resident cartoonist for CBS News, and a woman with 18 books to her credit. She is proof that you can do what you love, make others happy, and make a positive difference as you do it. Whoop, I lost it. My husband's working the microphone back there. An incredibly popular TED Talk speaker, she has long recognized the power of cartooning and humor in telling compelling stories. Besides the New Yorker, you can spot her drawings in publications like the New York Times, Medium, Forbes, and Politico. A lifelong learner, she is the creator of Live Drawing, a digital visual reporting, editorial cartooning style that allows her to capture and comment on live events in a visually unique and memorable way. From the Grammys and the Oscars, I guess you have to learn to draw to go to the Oscars. I can't get there. To her recent live drawing adventure in Dubai to highlight the Global Education and Skills Forum Global Teacher Prize, she is everywhere, pen or iPad in hand, to capture stories and ideas via captivating cartoons and insights. Like Erma Bombeck, she has used her creativity to empower women and to become a voice and visual reminder for equality and change. In her own career, in an early environment that lacked female mentors, she would pave the way with persistence to break boundaries and become a mentor and role model to the women who followed her. And like Erma, she's had the support of women and men along the way, including her side-by-side cartoonist husband, Michael Maslin. Liza once told me that creative success is about keeping an open attitude to the world and never giving up too early in the game. How lucky we are tonight to have her here to remind us of that and the fact that humor can change the world in so many wonderful and different ways. Ladies and gentlemen, Liza Donnelly.
Thank you so much. No, actually, I have it on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Nancy. That was really great. Really nice introduction. Nancy did a wonderful article about me with Parade, an interview. She's wonderful. I want to thank the Bombeck family for inviting me, having me here, and Terry Risby for making it all happen, and also my dear friend Wendy Liebman, who's the reason why I'm here. So thank you. So I have so much to show you. When I do these talks, I load the PowerPoint with cartoons, and then I have to sort of peel them away because I want to show you so many things. I'm just so excited to be here. Like Erma Bombeck. You know what she did, right? She wrote humor when women just didn't do that. They didn't do that. Women couldn't get a credit card in their own name. And they couldn't write humor, or they weren't supposed to write humor, but Erma did that, and I am forever grateful to her for being there. You know, when I was starting my career, she was there. So, I don't know what slides you can see. You see the tree one yet? You see it? Okay. So, now women know how to have fun too, right? Can you see the captions on these? It says women know how to have fun. It's true. We've been having fun with each other for hundreds of years, right? It's only recently I feel like we've been able to have fun together, make humor together in mixed company, really. I think women have been told not to do it, right? But writing humor is really hard work. And I know a lot of you know that, and that's why you're here. You're showing up. It's important to show up. Now, in this cartoon, I'm planning on making my parents miserable so my life is intolerable and I can become a writer. That's not true. That's not. You don't have to have a miserable childhood to become a writer. What am I hearing? People, you do? Maybe it helps. I don't know. Having a miserable relationship might help too. I have a great marriage, so it's okay. But marriage is also another great source of humor, as we know from Erma's work. But you know, why you become a humorist is a mystery to many of us, I think. Maybe we become a humorist because we're afraid, right? We're afraid of becoming an investment banker, so we become a humorist. How about we just go to a cave and paint his image on the wall? So, you know, these two are afraid of their job, which is to kill the mastodon, so they're going to go paint something on the wall. So humor, I mean, writing humor is really tough work. It's hard work. You have to show up. And you're gonna run into writer's block. Just accept it now. You're gonna find it. It's gonna join you, and you say, "Come on in, writer's block. I've been expecting you. It's okay. Let's spend some time together." Then go sit over there in the corner and just wait. Just go away for a while. Just if you accept it's gonna happen, then you know you just get past it. Writer's block. She often tells you who you're supposed to be, and how you're supposed to be, and what you're supposed to think, and what you should be doing instead of writing. So the writer's block is always telling you what to do. And as women, we kind of are used to that. You know, we're being told by our cultures that we have to be this, or we have to be that, we can't be this, we have to be this, we have to do this, we have to wear that, we have to act like this. And so I can't decide what I want to be when I grow up, a good girl or a slut. It starts when you're really little. We got these choices, and they're maybe not the ones we want. So you're at a writer's conference for humor, mostly, I guess. Maybe you guys are going to write some non-humorous things, but you know, it's an Erma Bombeck Writers Conference, so I think you're probably going to be writing a lot of humor. So what you need to consider doing is get that inner good girl, and we all have one. And even in the men in the room, they have an inner good boy, I'm sure. And what? Yeah. And tell that inner good girl to go sit in the corner with the writer's block for a while. Because you need to be able to think for yourself and think about who you are and where your voice is and what you want to say, not what somebody else is telling you to say. Took me a long time to figure that out, and I'll get into that later, and I'll talk about myself a little bit later. But tell the inner good girl to sit on the sidelines. And I'm not advocating for mean humor. I don't like mean humor. I like humor that is teasing. I like humor that is thoughtful and provocative and fun. But so the inner good girl, she can be there. She can come back and visit you every now and then and inform your work if you want her to. But I would say have her sit on the sidelines for a bit. So writing humor is tough work. It's hard work. It's grueling work. You make a lot of mistakes. You have to keep trying it over and over again. And I'm going to suggest that you look to the people that came before you, like Erma. Look for what they've done for us, how they paved the way, like the women before Erma even. Fanny Fern and Dorothy Parker, and the women who performed their writing, like Mae West and Moms Mabley and Phyllis Diller and Joan Rivers. They tell us about our lives and help us cope with what we're doing. And they also help us find our voices, I think, by watching them, and listening to them, and reading them. And they inform our lives. And I am, go through my life often thinking, what would Nora Ephron say? Because she and Erma and many of these women are writers, are a part of our daily lives. And I think it's okay to idolize Tina Fey if you want. And why is it, this woman's in the psychiatrist's house, and why is it you think Tina Fey is a god? It's okay. So these women that you look to and admire and read and idolize, all having something in common. They all showed up. They all, worked hard and they showed up, and they paved the way for us. And I wanted to tell you about some women that mean something to me that you may not have heard of before, or maybe you have. Women cartoonists at the New Yorker. When I began cartooning, I didn't think of myself as a woman cartoonist. In fact, I still don't. I'm a cartoonist who happens to be a woman. Being a woman informs my cartooning, but it doesn't define me solely. So in 1999, I was just going along with my career, doing my cartoons and having a wonderful time and enjoying my work, just drawing cartoons. And I was invited to be on a panel by the American Association of Editorial Cartoonists, a panel of women cartoonists at their convention. And I said, sure, I'd love to do that, even though I wasn't really an editorial cartoonist in the traditional sense. I wanted to do it. And so I went, and in preparation for that, I gave a lot of thought to it. I gave more thought to it than I ever had. Like, why is this? Why are there not more women cartoonists? Because there aren't. It's still unbalanced. And when I got there, I was in a room maybe about this size, and there were 5 of us on the panel, which is about the extent of women cartoonists, political cartoonists at the time, and it still is about that. And I looked out and I saw this sea of cartoonists, and they were all men. And it was like, whoa, it was like a visual, knock on the head, like this is something, this is really interesting. So I decided to do research after that, and I wrote this book, Funny Ladies. I went and looked at the cartoonists of the New Yorker from 1925 when it was founded until 2000. And lo and behold, what I found, was really happily surprised, was that there were women cartoonists in 1925 at the New Yorker magazine. The first issue had a woman in it. Her name was Ethel Plummer. She only had one cartoon, and then I don't know what happened to her. But she broke that glass ceiling. Then she ran away. Scared to death, I guess. No, the New Yorker was founded at a time in New York, which I'm sure you're all aware of. Right after the vote was won for women, there was an air, particularly in the big cities, of freedom and newness for women, I think. And women were coming to the big cities to try their hand at whatever they wanted to do, and one of that was art. And so there were a number of women illustrators and cartoonists in the city at the time. And the New Yorker hired them to be cartoonists. They just were looking for the best talent. The New Yorker was founded by Harold Ross and Jane Grant, his wife. And Jane Grant, who doesn't get enough credit in my mind, was a reporter for the New York Times, which in itself was very unusual at the time. But they were looking for the best talent, and they found some of these women, and these are some of them. Helen Hokinson, you may have heard of her, she's from Illinois. Mary Petty, Barbara Sherman, Alice Harvey, and the woman on the upper right corner, her name is Catherine Angel White, and you may have heard of her because she was an editor at the magazine, and she married E.B. White of the Elements of Style fame and so many other great books. But her job, I put her on here because her job was instrumental in helping guide the cartoonists to draw cartoons that were not so denigrating towards women. And I think she was an important force at the magazine as a strong female voice. So I'm going to show you some of the cartoons of the women. This is Barbara Sherman, and the caption is, "Well, of course I do say I'll never marry, though somehow I've always wanted to be a widow." Barbara Sherman is one of my favorites from that period of time because her cartoon voice seemed to be very much like a flapper, very, very modern, very feminist in a way in her cartoons. Oops, sorry, went the wrong way. Yes, Jane was stunning, but she's married now. Also Barbara Sherman. Barbara Sherman was from California, and she never married. Next one. And what was that woman's name, the one we liked her husband so much? So these women are also, they're telling us about their lives as women, young women, modern women in New York in the 20s and 30s. And it's not that much unlike now, I think. And these women put down women, they make fun of men, and they make fun of each other, and the way they treat other women. And here's another one. Oh, she's very attractive. I don't like her at all. And that's Alice Harvey also. And then the next one is by Helen Hokinson, who you may have heard of. She's the more famous one of all of them. I love to buy this, but couldn't the artist change it? My husband doesn't like codfish. And this one is by Mary Petty. I don't even try to understand them anymore. I don't know if you can see her hat is doing all kinds of weird things. It's a little hard to read. I don't think he's abnormal. He's just versatile. And I didn't understand this very well when I first read it. I don't know what she was talking about. And a friend pointed out that maybe this is a cartoon about homosexuality. And that's interesting that the New Yorker would publish something like that in the 20s. No, you disagree?
Yeah, what does it say?
I don't think he's abnormal. He's just versatile. We'll talk about it later. And this one is a sequential, and you read as if you're reading a couple lines of text. And the man is just gesticulating and talking, and the woman's just sitting there like this, listening. And at the end, he says, "You're a very intelligent little woman, my dear." And this one, Barbara Sherman drew this one. And this one, when I saw this, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I really relate to this, because I spent so much time in my 20s particularly. I was really shy when I was a kid, but then in my 20s, I just kept my mouth shut. It was so much easier to get along with people and to get people to like you if you didn't say something. And they thought you were smart. People thought I was smart. I didn't say anything. So these are some of the cartoons by these women, and as I was writing the book, I began to notice a trend and I have a theory, that the women in the 20s, in the 20s and 30s, there were about 8, 10, the number changed frequently, but it averaged about that. And then in the 50s, 60s, there were no women cartoonists. They dropped off with the Depression, they dropped off with the war, and then I think it's because of the traditions and the pressure to conform were such that women went to the home, and men did too, to follow traditional lives and not be humorous, not be creative. And then they returned, women cartoonists returned in the 70s. That's when I started. When I started, there were 2 women cartoonists at the New Yorker, Nurit Carlin and Roz Chast. And then I started about 6 months after Roz. So I think the 2 waves of women follow the waves of feminism, So that, and I did this cartoon with this in mind. I found a room of my own, and it's between my ears. So, thank you. Virginia Woolf said, a woman to be truly creative has to have a room of her own. And she meant that probably literally back in that day, but she also meant it figuratively, in that you have to find a room of your own. You have to have space to think, to not think about what the society wants you to be or wants you to act like or how to dress or whatever. Be your own person if you can. Find a room of your own. So, how did I get here? What did, a shy little girl from the suburbs of Washington, D.C. get to the Erma Bombeck Writers Workshop, and also go to places like Dubai and India and Singapore and France and all these different places? I was so shy. How did I get here? Well, I'll tell you a little bit. I started drawing when I was really little, I'm told. And then one year when I was about 7, my mother gave me a book of cartoons by James Thurber, your neighbor here in Dayton. And I started tracing his drawings, and I was hooked because my mother laughed. And I thought, this is great. I can make her happy and be by myself and not have to say a word to anybody. My sister was a juvenile delinquent, textbook version, and so my job was to be the good girl. Nobody said that, but that was what I gleaned, and so I was really quiet, and I was determined to make people happy. My mother, first and foremost. And then I continued doing that with my classmates, and I just drew cartoons through college. I went to college near here in Richmond, Indiana, and studied art there, and then I started thinking, I wanted to sell my cartoons. I wanted to be a professional cartoonist. And I looked at the New Yorker, which my parents had, and I saw that it did have some political cartoons in it. I had wanted to be a political cartoonist from the beginning, really, because I grew up in Washington during the Watergate and the civil rights and the feminist movement and all that, and I wanted to help somehow. And I thought, well, I don't have enough opinions, which I now think is really a gendered thinking on my part, or gendered pressure to be, like I said earlier, I was always quiet because it was easier to be quiet and not have to stand up and give an opinion. So the New Yorker had quiet cartoons in it, and I thought, this is great. I could maybe submit to them. And I did after college, and I sold within a few years, which I was just over the moon. Selling cartoons to the New Yorker is an odd business. Ask any cartoonist who's done it or tried it. It's really weird. You do a batch of cartoons, you call them batches, and you send them to the New Yorker. Back in that time I was living in New York, I'm still living there, but I would drop them off. And this is the place you drop off your cartoons. That was then. It's different now. It's a dreary looking building, a dreary looking vestibule with a woman that barely acknowledged you, and you slip your envelope in there and then run away. and then come back the next week and pick up your rejects. And this is a drawing of me doing that. So my first cartoons were very, very quiet, like I was. They bought this one. It's a sequential one. Man walks down the street, says, maybe I don't pet dogs enough. He turns around and pets the dog and then walks on. So really quiet. A lot of captionless cartoons in the early day because I was really, I didn't like words. I'm scared of words. Still, I have a better relationship with words now. But and then not long after that, it was very slow for me. Like it was said earlier, I had a lot of rough times. Erma, you said that Erma had a lot of difficult periods in her life trying to get projects done, and I also had a rough time keeping myself in the New Yorker, and that's where my husband encouraged me. After I met him, we married in 1988, so I was already well on my way. He had his career and I had my career, but there was a point in the 80s when I really wanted to stop because I couldn't take it anymore. But anyway, I digress. It was tough going, but they eventually were buying more of mine, like once every 6 months. That's how slow it was. And this one, you will find love and happiness and vote for Fritz Mondale. Maybe some of you don't remember who he was, but that was my first political cartoon in the New Yorker, and I was so excited, like, yes, I'm on my way. I'm a political cartoonist in a New Yorker kind of way. I think the real editorial cartoonists kind of look down their noses at me, like, oh, that's just really softball stuff, but I didn't care. That was my voice, and I'm sticking to it. But I also did quieter, funny cartoons, like Ice Cubes Down Your Back, $1.50. I'm off to my risotto class. Later in the 80s, I started taking the temperature of what was going on in New York, particularly, but I think it was also the rest of the country. But food was really big. Risotto was kind of like a thing back then. And I did I had 3 cartoons about risotto over the years. It would take more than your pleats to drive us apart, but not much more. So slowly I started, these are just samples of my cartoons. Slowly I started to do cartoons of women talking in the cartoons. I wasn't conscious that I was doing it, but I was doing it. And particularly in the 90s, there was a new editor. I've survived a lot of editors at the New Yorker. Tina Brown became editor in the 90s. And I looked back on that time, and I see that she was buying a lot of cartoons like this from me, of women saying things like, "Some wine with your vest?" Women women lovingly poking fun at the men in their lives. So I think I didn't really work with Tina Brown. I met her a couple times, but by virtue of what she bought from me, she encouraged a certain voice to emerge stronger. You don't have to go to this party. It's men optional. I had a headache too, but he went away. Your chances of hailing a cab are better if you go to the curb. I'd invite you in, but my life's a mess. So not only do I make fun of men, I make fun of women too, a lot. And that's what a lot of the women humorists have done. Dorothy Parker did it a lot. She made fun of her gender. And I think that kind of teasing it helps us see what we might be doing that's not quite right, you know? In a relationship, in a culture, whatever. That's why I think cartoons are so great. They can really open your eyes. I've used cartoons. I've taught briefly at Vassar, and I would use cartoons in women's studies class. Not my own necessarily, but other cartoons to point out things that students might not have noticed or really gotten from a long academic essay. They'd see the cartoon and go, "Oh, I get it." So that's one of my favorite things to try to do with cartoons. It won't work if I tell you what I want, because if I tell you what I won't want it anymore. This is not autobiographical at all. I want to stay friends, Janine, but not in the same book group. I guess you guys can relate to that because you're probably all in book groups, right? Everyone in the room is in a book group. So I didn't protest this war, but I'll try to protest the next one. So sometimes I try to sneak in social commentary. This was done during the Iraq War, and I chose 2 women just because I could. You know, it didn't have to be 2 women; it could be 2 men. That's the great thing about being a creative person, either in cartooning or in writing. You can make the speaker whoever you want. That's kind of obvious. But when I started, I think I just automatically made a man the everyman. I just didn't think about it. But then over time, I began to think, oh, I can make a woman saying that, you know? It doesn't have to be a man. And if you make a woman saying that now, as opposed to 1960 or something, or 50, it was more like, oh, it's a woman's thing. But now a woman can be every man, I think. Since we're both working on the same marriage, I thought it would be a good idea if we get together and compare notes. So marriage has been good to me. My husband and I did a book together called Cartoon Marriage, which was a lot of fun. We didn't know if we could work together. We never really had. We work in separate spaces. I work in a barn and he works in the house. Because he wanted to work in the house. And the one chapter we argued about was the chapter about arguing. I think I'd look better without you. Oh, I don't like mean cartoons. I really told you I don't.
It's not mean, it's honest.
There you go. She said it's not mean, it's honest. Now that our last is off to college, could you tell me who the hell you are? So right, if you've had kids, and we have 2 daughters, and they're grown, and they're out of the house. Those years up till college, you're like, it's so fast and so crazy, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and you're like, wait, what? Who are you? It's like crazy. So kids are great fodder for me. Pace yourself, honey. You're only 3. This is a more recent cartoon. And then the next cartoon is one of my personal favorites. Some kids at school called you a feminist, Mom, but I punched them out. I'm staying together for the sake of my parents. That's in humor, this, sometimes you just take something and twist it or flip it. That's what I did here. Sometimes there's great little shticks like that. And then in this next one, I put this in and then I took it out, and I put it in, and I took it out. I really just like it because, you'll see. Still not funny. Try jamming yourselves all together into the car. What I like about this is it's a woman talking. It's a woman directing the humor, right? It's a woman telling these men what to do. Who ordered the special prosecutor? Again, this is, can anybody guess when I drew this? What decade? Bill Clinton? Ring a bell? And this is, again, just taking a word. I like to take words in the news and plug them into cartoons a lot. I do that a lot, and this is pretty an obvious one. So that's the kind of political cartoon I have done for the New Yorker. And then, I was just going along, doing my cartoons, political, some not political, some silly, whatever. And then 9/11 happened. And I didn't think I could be a cartoonist anymore. And I drew this. Daddy, can I stop being worried now? I drew that, sent it to the New Yorker, and they bought it and printed it, and I thought, okay, well, I'm back on track, I think. I can try to keep doing this. It was a real, like everybody, it was a real wake-up call, or, you reevaluated who you were and what you were doing at that point. And I just decided after this that I would try to do more political cartoons than I had been. And it also coincided with the advent of the internet, too, so that was helpful. And I did this one, Mommy, what did you do in the war on women? That came a little bit later, of course, when that phrase was being used in the news. And so I did more political cartoons, and I kept doing my work at the New Yorker, the slice of life stuff, but I did more political cartoons and published them if the New Yorker didn't want them on the internet with the various sites. And I also dedicated myself to do more cartoons about women because I felt like, okay, I'm a woman. I have this thing I do and I can do. I have a skill. I should probably try to use it to bring awareness to women's rights. men cartoonists do it, and they do it beautifully, but they're not women. So I have a perspective that they don't have. So maybe I can bring something else to the table. So in that way, everybody can break the glass ceiling. This woman saying, since when can just anyone break the glass ceiling? Anybody can, in whatever way, in small ways and big ways. So I did more cartoons about women in America, in the US, about our lives. And this one, stop working long hours, cleaning, cooking, doing laundry, caring for your parents, your kids, volunteering, worrying, and call me in the morning. And I would, for this group, I would change the caption and say at the end, go write your essay. Are you hiring me because I'm cheap, I'm qualified, or I'm cheap and qualified? Now, these are papers. The Daily Scoop. Woman leads board meeting while menstruating. Woman runs company while pregnant. Woman overcomes PMS to win Nobel Prize. This was done right after Marisa Mayer was hired by Yahoo a number of years ago, and she was pregnant, and the media found out, and they were like, what? Can she do that? Can she run a company and be pregnant? This is like 10 years ago, or even less. And so I pushed myself because of the internet and my ability to publish on sites that would publish stronger stuff. I started thinking, I gotta speak more strongly, and I did this one about rape, and I've done some cartoons about that subject. Am I going to get rape checklist? And she's thinking in her mind, skirt opaque enough, hair too provocative, heels too high, skirt too short, lipstick too red, attitude too sassy, bra too push-up, walk too carefree. So did I drink too much? So, these things that women internalize and try to think about before they go out the door in a culture. And okay. And so up until a number of years ago, I don't really remember the numbers, I thought that I could only do cartoons about being a woman in America or being a person in America because that's who I am. I don't know what it's like to be somebody in Afghanistan or wherever. I have to draw about what I know. But then I got to thinking about there must be some common denominator. I might be able to do something about women, particularly in other countries, if I find a common ground. And I found what I thought was a common ground in that women are diverse. We look different, we act different, we dress different, we speak differently, and we have breasts and vaginas, and we're nurturing and sweet. Are we nurturing and sweet? Are we all like that? I don't know, but we all are belittled and underpaid and harassed, and I can't read it here, but we're all on some level have to deal with the same kind of things with our culture. It's changing, and that's good, but I think we have that in common. It's worse in other countries than here, of course, but I found that common ground. And then I also did cartoons like this. This is a sequential one on the upper left-hand side. I've heard that American women think we're oppressed. That's nice that they think of us. I hear they have to wear 7-inch heels and thick makeup. I worry about them. And then when there's a thing in the news that strikes me that I feel like I want to be a part of the conversation, I'm very active on social media, as you know, and I try to put my cartoons out there. I don't care if I get paid sometimes, I just put it out there as part of the conversation with people around the globe. And this was one that I felt like I had to talk about. Yeah. So, in other words, this is a global problem. That unfortunately that crowd is even bigger than I drew. So I'm going to wrap up. Writing is hard work, I just keep pushing, keep trying. You have to show up, as I said. I'm going to have a T-shirt made, show up. My gravestone's going to say, she showed up. Like, just keep trying stuff. And you also have to convince yourself that you're supposed to be there, tell yourself that you're supposed to be there, wherever there is. I think it's a skill that many of us need to learn how to do. I had to learn it. I didn't learn it until my 40s, I think, and even then I still worry, like, you know, I just feel like I'm not supposed to be certain places, and I sort of pull back and be the shy kid again. So it's a constant dialogue with yourself to tell yourself that you're supposed to be there. And so, you know, humor's a great bringer together. It can divide, but it can also bring people together because everybody laughs. And so let's go write some humor that brings people together. Thank you.